Hey everybody, welcome to the webinar today. We've got a great one for you with Thomas Haymore and Ben Sardella and myself, Max Outschuler. We're talking about building the perfect inside sales stack in 2016. There's a lot of different things that go into this, and if there's ever been a better time, I don't think there has been ever been a better time to really talk about building technology out for salespeople. I mean, it's an incredible time. There's a lot of technology out there, and right now it's really figuring out how it all fits together, what you really need, and there's a lot of different things that go into it. So we're going to go into kind of a few different areas today with these guys. First, we're going to kick it off with a quick video clip, and then I'll get into introductions and kicking it off.
Hi, my name is Stephen Lang, and we're going to take a look at what my day looks like as an SDR at Vandelay Industries. Last Friday, my manager, Katrina Sanford, kicked off a week-long SMB Blitz campaign. Our goals? Every day she wants each of us to get 89 dials, 12 connected calls, and 3 appointments set. A bit of a stretch, but I'm going to show you how the InsideSales.com product platform accelerates my work by making my day more visible, productive, and effective. It starts with NeuroView, which tells me which leads I'm most likely to contact and close. Then I can use the Power Dialer to most efficiently communicate with those leads. Vision helps me track my engagement with those leads by monitoring their email and web engagement. And finally, Power Standings helps our sales team motivate each other and track our own goals. When these products all work side by side, I call more, engage more, track more, and more importantly, close more. Let's get started. The first thing I do is head to Salesforce to get things set up for Katrina's SMB Blitz campaign. I need a new voicemail, one that's tailored to the SMB Blitz and recorded in my own voice. That way, I don't have to repeat myself every time I get an answering machine. Instead, I just hit Leave Voicemail, and the system leaves my pre-recorded message. I do the same thing with email. Set up a pre-made SMB Blitz email, tailored from templates created by my manager. Now I'm ready to hit the phone and start dialing. In the background, NeuroView is prioritizing all my leads so I get the best ones based on likelihood to contact them this morning and based on their likelihood to set an appointment with me. On my browser, I see these likelihoods as a neural score given to each lead. My first one has a neural score of 95, which means this is a hot lead. I call, she answers, we set an appointment. Not a bad way to start the day. I log the call in Power Dialer, which saves the lead in Salesforce, and I'm ready to make the next call. I click Neural Next to get my next prioritized lead. That lead doesn't answer, but that's okay. Remember that voicemail and email I made this morning? I just click Leave Voicemail to leave that pre-recorded message, and Send Email to send my pre-made email. Easy. I keep this going through the morning. Rinse and repeat. Close to lunchtime, my coworker Henry sends me a throwdown challenge. There on the bottom left is my Power Standings app. Normally it shows my standings in the office and my key metrics, but Henry's throwdown challenge has taken it over. He thinks he can set more appointments than me. Throwdown accepted. Right after that, I get an email from Katrina. She used Salesforce reporting to analyze the hour-by-hour results of our last campaign. It says that the 12 p.m. hour was the most successful time to contact leads. I eat a quick lunch and am back at my desk by 12 p.m. to take advantage of this. Enjoy your luxurious lunch, Henry. With most reps gone for lunch, I receive an immediate response pop-up. Someone just filled out a web form on our site and Power Dialer let me know. These leads are the best. They call in, I answer, another appointment set, and I'm up another one on Henry. I'm ready for my next call, but I get a vision notification. Remember that person I left a voicemail and email with this morning? He's just clicked through my email link to our website. I just press the click to call button directly from the vision notification, and after we talk, I've set another appointment. And I keep this going through the afternoon. At 6 p.m. I get a Power Standings toast that I'm the new leader in appointments set. I don't just beat Henry, I'm the best on our team. I glance up at our leaderboard TVs and discover that I actually lead the team in dials, connects, and appointments. Pretty great start to this campaign. Katrina's hour-by-hour report shows that contacts after 6 p.m. are very low, but 9 a.m. is the second best time for contacts, so I'm done for the day. But I'll be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow, ready to get the best leads and defend my top spot.
All right. So getting started today, first off, we have myself, Max Outschuler, who will be quarterbacking this thing and moderating and then getting to all your questions. So feel free to use the Q&A inside the app on the tab. Ask us any questions you want. We'll get to them either during or after the webinar. We should be able to fit everything in and a ton of questions in the hour today. We have myself, Max Outschuler, CEO of Sales Hacker Inc. We've been serving content all about the next generation of sales at saleshacker.com and do our Sales Stack conference. Did one in November and we'll do one this summer in June. We have Ben Sardella, the co-founder and CRO of Datanyze, who oversees all sorts of revenue at Datanyze, and you can check them out. Thomas Haymore, Senior Manager of Momentum Strategy at InsideSales.com, who works with sales leaders to develop processes and implementation strategies at companies that use inside sales. And thanks for joining us. We got a great webinar for you today. Just a couple things to know. Last about an hour. Q&As on the bottom. Use the hashtag ISDCwebinar, and this will be recorded. So we'll give you some more information about how to access it towards the end. But without further delay, I'm going to let Ben Sardella kick it off for us. Ben, you can take it away.
Thanks, Max. Appreciate the intro there. So I'm going to get started here where it's near and dear to my heart, being at Datanyze. We are a data company to enable sales and marketing teams. And, you know, I really feel like when we talk about the sales stack, you really should start at the data game first and foremost, so that all the other tools that I'm going to go into can be really effective for you. The most important things to think about when we're talking about data is, you know, what can I do with that data and how can it help me be more personal? How can I make my messaging or my phone calls more targeted? And at the basic level, how can I show this prospect that I've done my homework and that I actually care about potentially helping them? So we'll get into the 3 Ps here, and we've broken this down accordingly. First and foremost, providing intelligence about these true prospects. So you want to make sure your reps aren't wasting time connecting with people that will never be buyers. One of the hidden, dirty little secrets about sales is we waste a lot of time, and we're wasting a lot of time because either we don't have effective or efficient tools at our fingertips, and we're working off of wrong information. And so there's lots of great tools out there to help us target the right folks at the right time. And, the second P here is prioritizing the follow-up activities. So we want to make sure we are spending that time on those prospects that are most likely going to become our customers or have the highest probability of becoming our customers in the shortest period of time. Thirdly, we want to present a prospect's interest to the rep. So we want to make sure that the rep has enough information at their fingertips to carry on relevant and engaging conversations. So when we get into sales intelligence, and we want to know, how do you know what to look for in a sales intelligence provider? I've broken this down into a couple of areas. Certainly, again, these things are pretty near and dear to what I believe is an effective sales intelligence platform. First and foremost, signal-based data. So, static data is something that is kind of something that people still buy. People are out there buying lists, trying to work off those lists. Again, that leads to a lot of inefficiencies. And every time that happens, you've not only wasted one email sending or one voicemail left, but the reps continue to work off of that data. And so every passing of task or event that happens after that is continuously wasting their time and putting you farther away from the goals that you need to go and hit. Secondly, you want to make sure that the provider of the data is updating that data set frequently. Ideally, it's in real time. So again, you want to know when something changes An example of this, and I'll give a shameless plug for Data Nice here, a good example is if you care about who's using what technology, for instance, and you want to know that somebody has just added a free trial of my competitor's technology and I want to be a part of that sales cycle as well, it'd be really nice to have an alert right in your inbox that day saying, hey, these guys are trying your competitor. So those are the types of things that we like to focus on, I think is really important no matter what data provider you're looking at. And then is the data actually available where the reps live and breathe? So you want to make sure that whatever platform you're using, your sales reps don't have to look for that data in a lot of different sources. If you want them to live and breathe in your CRM, then they should be working in that CRM application. So that make sure the data is available in any of the CRMs they happen to be using, or is it available directly in a browser as they're doing research on the particular prospects they want to target. So kind of pulling this all together, a great example would be imagine getting an inbound lead. There's accurate data that immediately appends to that lead, whether that's your marketing automation system or your CRM. You can then score, route, prioritize that lead effectively. And then when that rep reaches out, she will have firmographic information, knowing things like what tech they use, what's the up-to-date contact information, what's their latest revenue or employee size that was last reported. All of this leads to targeted messaging and instant rapport and credibility that you're creating with the person that you're engaging with. Now we're going to get into predictive scoring, and interesting enough, both Data Nice and Inside Sales both have solutions around this. So I highly suggest taking a look at what we both have to offer around this and seeing what's right for you. But at its core, when we talk about predictive scoring and why it's important, we got to first think about what is this predictive analytics or scoring or whatever everybody's calling it right now. And it's really the use of statistics and machine learning and data mining and modeling to analyze your current and historical facts. And ideally, we're making predictions about future events. Most importantly, the likelihood that someone's going to actually buy your service. So taking the aforementioned data and an analysis of your best accounts and some machine learning combined with that, you can, at the very least, you'll get help accurately applying a score and helping you target and prioritize the best leads that you're going to be working on, whether it's that day, that campaign, that quarter, etc. And it can even go an additional step where you can start to fill your funnel with prospects that you're not talking to today, that aren't currently in your CRM, the ones you should be going after because they look exactly like all the deals you've already won. And you'll also know to stay away from the ones that are very similar to the deals you lose all the time. So again, it really helps you be targeted and focused on the things that you should be spending your time on. Now, this is backed up by data, so we had to throw this slide in here just to make sure it's not a bunch of fluff that we're giving you here, but real research has been done here. And because the predictive scoring and that side of things it's really new. I mean, we're a couple of years into it. We're all trying to figure it out. We're working closely with our customers to really understand how we can help them the most. The customers that have actually gone down this path are reporting some really great results, and they're really interested in continuing to do this because it's making their lives a lot better. So, definitely a little research done here. It looks like this side of things is here to stay when you're talking about the tech stack, and definitely something to consider. Now, going into the next slide here, again, what you want to look for in any provider in this space would be something that will analyze all of your data, including buying signals, your average customer value that you have, the closed deals that you've won or lost, basically everything so that you can accurately predict these future events that are going to lead you to more revenue and higher conversion rates and things like that. You're going to want something that allows for a very company level specific optimization. So what I mean with all those big words, essentially you want to have something that's created specifically for your company. It's really hard to get cookie cutter in this space right now because there's so many different nuances with every business. Every one of you are different than the other businesses that are here on the line as well. You all have close deals in certain ways for certain reasons, even if you are all technology companies, for instance. There's going to be differences across the board. So you want to have a platform around this area that can be customized specifically for you. And at the same time, for instance, one of our customers, they sell to the SMB, they also sell to the enterprise. So you want to make sure you can build multiple models that accommodate for those two types of scenarios. And of course, lastly, it needs to be fully integrated with your CRM. These things need to be tied in and talking to each other. Now, moving on to the engagement tool side of things, we have done a great job of integrating with a lot of the great engagement tools that happen to be out there. I know Inside Sales has a lot of great engagement tools as part of their suite. So, definitely want to make sure that, we cover this area, because when I started my sales career, it was really about spraying and praying. We didn't have a lot of the data. We didn't have the ability to score our leads in an effective way. And so once you've kind of gathered all that data, you want to make sure that you're really being personable. Nowadays, we're getting emails all the time, and not just in one place, not just in our inbox, but also in LinkedIn, and also in sometimes text, or sometimes other social platforms, sometimes posts to comments to blog posts and things like that. Reps are out there finding really creative ways to engage, and so you want to make sure personalization is at the forefront of all of that. People want to feel like you're reaching out to just them, and being able to use all those tools we've talked about, and then using the right engagement platform to effectively engage with them and make it feel like it's been, you wrote that specifically for them, is really important to your conversion rates. You also want to make sure that leads don't slip through the cracks. You got to make sure every lead gets the appropriate amount of touches aligned with the cadence model you guys have agreed to as part of your sales process. So whether it's 8 touch attempts before you move on from a lead, for example, you got to make sure that's happening in an effective way. And if you're, like Inside Sales or like Data Analysis, you're probably working off of thousands of leads all the time, and it's really hard to micromanage these things. So having an automated engagement platform can really go a long way to you being effective. And lastly, you want to test these campaigns. So you want to have a platform that allows you to create multiple emails with different subject headers, do multivariate testing, and really discover what works for you and what doesn't. And then once you found something that works, then you double down on that particular template or campaign that you happen to be working off of from there.
And so in the past, technology didn't exist that allowed you to do any of this kind of testing, did it? I mean, the tracking, the testing, the templating, all that stuff, coupled with, the researching the information. I mean, it's a pretty interesting time.
It really is, Max. It was both as an individual contributor and as a sales leader, I've kind of had the experience of both without having this type of technology at my fingertips, and I wish I did. Certainly, one of the reasons why I co-founded Data Analysis was because of this in particular. And what was crazy is we used to rely on the feedback of the salespeople, or we used to look at the salesperson who was the top producer and say, well, what are you doing that's so great? And now everybody's going to go replicate exactly what that person's doing. So let's copy their templates. Let's pull any knowledge we can from that individual person, and now let's all go do that. And then those things become ineffective pretty quickly. So yeah, having these tools can really be helpful nowadays. And if you're not using them, your competition is, and you're getting left in the dust.
Yeah, that's a good call.
So talking about outbound email messaging, digging in a little bit further here on the cadence and consistency. So, these tools allow you to manage the consistency, which I think is really important. Once you've analyzed the open and the click rates, you've done your multivariate testing, you really can get into a pretty smooth process where it's fairly automated with these platforms. And that's kind of the nice part of things, as SDRs have gone from being the email monkey, so to speak. It's now they're in charge of analyzing the emails that are going out automatically. And so the whole game has really stepped up for folks like SDRs. And I think these tools have really been a big reason for that. And then lastly, the productivity side. So you want to make sure these engagement tools are layering over your existing system. So again, going back to the CRM, we all know everything needs to be tied in with the CRM, but also things like LinkedIn or Gmail. You want to make sure reps aren't kind of jumping into a bunch of places, but a lot of these things are living natively in the platforms they're at, and those platforms are talking to each other. The last thing you want to have happen is one SDR cold emailing one company when they're already in your CRM, and then you're creating duplicate leads, for instance, and there's a lot of confusion because at the end, it's the single person that's the receiver of all of this, and they just look like, you guys look like then that you don't have your shit together. And most importantly, you want to be professional and make sure that, again, it's personalized for them. And if they're just getting hit from multiple sources, that's going to look really bad on the, on your company, and you're probably not going to get the sale. So these tools won't instantly improve messaging, but make sure you're relevant, you provide value, and for some of the best practices, we say be relevant, segment out prospecting lists by persona and use cases, have different email cadences for each. These tools will enable you to easily develop templates for your targeted messaging, introduce social prospecting, so use LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook, mine those nuggets of information to personalize and humanize your messaging. Remember, these are people we're sending these messages to. Put yourself in the prospect's shoes. Remember that your contact may be getting, a couple, in some extreme cases, like myself, I get like 100 emails a day. Maybe some of your prospects aren't getting that many, but even 20 is disruptive for someone's day. And so you want to make sure that you're standing out in the crowd from all those emails that are coming in. Don't overwhelm them. Make sure your messaging is appropriate for where they are in the buying cycle or the customer journey. So to wrap up here, we're talking about dialers, and I know this is a big reason why Inside Sales has been so successful. This is one of the first products that they rolled out. There's some great tools out there as well that are really getting into this. And I was kind of, as a sales leader, I was one of the first to adopt a dialer in my CRM, and just the fact that the reps didn't have to type on a phone, for instance, was kind of revolutionary at the time. And then when you can start capturing that somebody actually made a call in your CRM automatically, like that was mind-blowing. I'm starting to show my age a little bit. But, what's really important now is taking that to the next level. So, these prescriptive dialers are really changing the way that the reps are connecting with their leads. So you combine that with accurate firmographic data, signal-based data, and scoring automatically appended to the leads. Today's dialers can really serve up to the right prospects at the right time, and that's the most important thing, is your timing and alignment with your, with the messaging and with all the data that you have. Transcribing calls is something that is a growing area of these dialers. I know the technology is starting to really get great in this space. And transcribing the calls is important for a number of different reasons. You want to make sure that reps are not having a ton of filler words in their conversations, for example. You want to make sure that they're touching upon the right keywords, they're creating the right emotion for that particular prospect or lead to get them to the next stage in the buying cycle. You also want to make sure that they're able to handle objections properly. So there's a lot of great ways that dialers can be extremely effective for your processes, and why I highly suggest you should be implementing a dialer. It also allows for analysis of the call with management. So again, I mentioned filler words. Tone is another one, length of the call, things like that. So all of these can add up to being much more effective and allow managers to coach their salespeople much more effectively than they ever have before.
Are your reps
so wrap it up with that.
Scripts, Ben?
So our reps today, they do not run on scripts, so to speak, but we do have guidelines for them. We do a lot of training, so we try to stay away from scripts But if I was to launch the team from day one, you got to have something that they're able to go off of to at least get started. The sales team here, most of the sales folks have been here for a while now, so they don't really need the guidance of a script so much, but they certainly have outlines and things like that to help them along the way. And then we do a lot of training and testing and make sure and role playing to make sure that they're able to handle things before they ever jump on a call.
And so it's similar to how you kind of run the email optimization part, where you kind of start with a baseline, here are the certain things to say, here are the guidelines, and then as your reps have conversations, they take the best practices from the transcriptions from the calls or things that they heard work, bring them back to the team, and then you just keep incorporating it into the conversation going forward with that other reps have with prospects?
Absolutely. Yeah, and the other thing to think about too, which I didn't really mention, is you want to make sure in a similar way to your emails, if you're leaving voicemails, you should be testing those out too. There should be some type of quasi-scripted, so you don't want to sound robotic, but it should be a very consistent voicemail that you're leaving, and then test that out against other voicemails as well that you're leaving, and then from there you can measure, are people calling you back, things like that too.
Do you coach your guys on inflection and energy in these calls?
Absolutely.
I know it's a little off topic of the technology, but it's a super important part that I think is left out.
Well, part of it is technology related in some ways, because a lot of the dialers out there allow you to barge into calls and at least listen in and just to see what the quality is, or recording a call, make sure you ask for approval, but you can certainly do those things to get a feel for how reps are handling that. Even building rapport. So, it's tone. Do you have the right energy?
Looks like we're experiencing a little bit of technical difficulties. We've lost Max and we have lost
Do you hear me?
Ben. Thomas, are you still there?
Max is here.
Max is there. It looks like we lost Ben.
I think Ben
let's
off.
let
He was
Ben
about to wrap up. Yeah.
Okay, let's let Ben call back in, but let's head over. Okay.
Cool. Thomas, you want to kick us off on your section here?
Absolutely. We'll give my best to Ben, and I'm sorry you guys are missing out on the final words there. He's doing a great job wrapping up. So I'd like to just second everything that Ben said. It's a lot of information to consume, all the different topics that you have to really use to make your sales team function well. I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well with the process of integrating new sales technology, and a little bit on a map of an easy way to break this down. Well, I shouldn't say easy. A way to break this down into 3 phases as you're looking to really improve and optimize your sales stack. So one of the things I do in my role at Inside Sales is we engage and embed with a client and help them integrate and customize our technology. And like anyone who's done a technology integration, what we find is that it's actually the human factors that present the biggest difficulties. Everything from compliance at the rep level to understanding strategic and business goals at the management level. So I've got a few topics here and a few suggested questions that, surprisingly enough, people just don't ask. You'll see these questions and you'll be tempted to think to yourself, okay, everyone knows this, or of course I would ask, who are the stakeholders? But it's amazing how many times you just don't bother to ask. And even internally, if you're not asking these questions, you won't know if the technology integration has been successful or not, because what we're going for is business value, not for necessarily ease of use, unless, of course, ease of use is part of the business value and you think it'll make your reps more productive. So start off talking about stakeholders. So a couple of key questions here. Who are the stakeholders? In my role, it typically boils down to who is the executive in charge of sales, the reps, and then who's the executive in charge of sales ops. But we're not going to be successful unless we also include a representative for marketing, a representative from IT, and even possibly a representative from BI or business intelligence if that is housed in a different organization. And it's also really important to know who's going to operate be the day-to-day operator. To be successful, you need someone on the ground who's empowered. And if you're getting someone who's got their full day job and then somehow they're going to fit the integration into their extra time, you need to have a conversation about how integrating new technology means breaking old processes and creating new processes. That is a full-time job. And then finally, with stakeholders, you need to identify who decides if the project is going to be successful. Now, I know in today's day and age, we're all data-driven. None of us would ever admit to having any biases or making judgments based on intuition. That's out of fashion. But at the end of the day, someone is going to decide if that technology that you bought is worth it. It was worth the investment, and they're going to keep it. You need to identify who that is ahead of time and make sure that when you're establishing the success metrics, that they're bought in so that you don't get a surprise at the end of the project. So data. One of the other things we deal with a lot is bad data. If you don't know what's happening with your reps or sales team, you don't know how you can be successful. So one of the ways to look at this is establishing baseline metrics. So let's say you've bought InsightSales.com technology platform or another sales acceleration platform. You would typically get something like a dialer, an engagement monitor of the email and calls, maybe some predictive intelligence with lead scoring, and there might be an assortment of other tools you get. Now, the easy metrics are going to be number of dials, number of callbacks, number of appointments set, the usual things that a sales team will look at. But it's not about delivering an absolute number. It's about delivering a lift. And you don't know what that lift is going to be until you know what currently your reps are doing. And that can sometimes require a huge amount of cleaning. So if you're switching dialers, there's small questions like, does the dialer you're switching from count calls that are less than 5 seconds? Or does it count zero duration calls? Or does it only count calls that are attached to the right kind of lead record? These are the kind of small questions that will come up and just totally ruin your ability to evaluate whether the project was successful. And if you don't get out ahead of them, you won't know those problems until you're, in the boardroom trying to explain why there's been a decrease in productivity. When you know there's been an increase, you can't prove it from the data. And I mentioned here the single source of truth. So sometimes there is a real data set. Like maybe Salesforce is the single source of truth for your company, but it may not be. Salesforce might actually be pulling the data from an Oracle backend or another CRM backend, and you need access to that so you get the single source of truth that everybody agrees on. Because if you're going to be measuring dials or increasing close rates, you need to know that the numbers you're using for the baseline are true, that they're the gospel, and that you don't have to get lost in arguments about that data when you're really just trying to integrate the technology. Finally, success criteria. In sales acceleration and sales stack generally, there's a lot of promises thrown around about how much lift these tools are going to provide. And there's a lot of truth to that. These tools are really focused on bringing scientific approaches and really modern approaches to an industry or an organization that has traditionally been run a lot by intuition, gut feeling, and just hoping your top performers really stand out and prove themselves without having to fiddle and turn too many knobs. So sales acceleration brings science to that, but you're not going to be hugely successful on every metric, and you have to decide what those metrics are. So as a company, you might think, okay, we like the level of dials our sales rep is doing. What we don't like are the conversions of dials to appointments. And so, okay, what are the KPIs around that? Talk time is a good proxy, so let's look at talk time. Let's look at that conversion rate. Let's look at the conversion rate from talks and dials to opportunities. And you need to really come together and identify that, and you need to have a process in place to continually discuss these success criteria. You don't want to end up in a situation where you integrate technology, you let it run for 6 weeks, and at the end of the 6 weeks is the only time you're evaluating it. You're going to have some unhappy people in that room if in 6 weeks they're first learning about some of the changes in the data. And this goes back a little bit to our stakeholders and data question, but who's in charge of measuring these? It's in today's world with tools like Salesforce, it's really easy to convince yourself that measuring KPIs is as simple as running a report. It is never that simple. There are always weird artifacts in the data. There's always someone who isn't using the tools correctly, and there's always a report that actually takes a week to run. And so this needs to be ironed out ahead of time so that instead of scrambling to try to figure out even, okay, how are we even going to measure this, you're putting together a report that people can actually evaluate and discuss, because the KPIs, again, are representative of the business value you're trying to deliver. So you're not trying to just make numbers higher. You're trying to deliver more business value. Like your sales technology stack is not just about, I want more dials or I want more type time. What it's about is I want more revenue. I want more profit and revenue for my sales team. So you want to be in a position where you're discussing the results of the KPIs and whether those represent true business value, not just squabbling over what are the KPIs, how do we measure them, so on and so forth. So there's a lot more to talk about in project management. And for those of you who are project managers, this will feel like, okay, yes, I know this is second nature. But remember that when you're dealing with a sales organization specifically, you're not dealing with a lot of project managers. You're dealing with people who sell, and that's their core skill set. And managing integration of new technology is not going to be something that is second nature or easy to them. It needs a lot of support. And, the sales team is often the tip of the spear at a company. It drives revenue. And so anytime they're not spending on their core selling activities, they're going to be losing revenue. So you have to be very careful in your execution of this project so that your sales team is getting all the lift they can on that technology without any of the drag of breaking new processes while trying to integrate new ones. So that's some general guidance on, okay, how can you work best to integrate a new sales technology, new sales stack, and just some guidance generally on project management. I'm going to review now a few slides on a way to think about your sales process and how to break it down into manageable pieces. If you listen to Ben and to Max and now to me, the options are pretty limitless in what you could integrate. And where do you start? Well, you need to start with a process map. You need to understand where your sales team is getting its leads or accounts and contacts, what it's doing with them as it's trying to contact them, and then how it's qualifying and closing. Huge numbers of sales organizations never even bother to map out their process. Yes, it's living in the sales management's head. But when it's living in someone's head, even if lots of people generally agree, that means no one really knows exactly what's supposed to be happening. If you don't know what's supposed to be happening, then you're violating the principle I talked about earlier where you actually don't know what the benchmarks are. You don't know what the baselines are. And if you don't know who's supposed to be in charge of the schedule, you don't know who the stakeholder of the process, you don't know who the stakeholders are, and you'll find yourself in a lot of trouble trying to fix a process you don't actually understand. So what I've got on the screen here is a current state that shows a generic sales process broken down into 3 phases. Phase 1, lead and list acquisition. Phase 2, contacting cadence. And Phase 3, qualification and close. Now, some tools will cross these boundaries, especially, say, a dialing tool. However, a lot of the tools will fit functionally in one or the other. So, for instance, a dialer would fit in the contacting cadence as part of a prospecting motion, whereas in Phase 3, a dialer is more about recording the calls and staying on top of an opportunity than it is about cold calling. So it's possible to separate out your tools and the different functions those tools are supposed to perform into these 3 phases. So let's just do a quick run through of these 3 phases, and then I'll talk a little bit about how you can drive some improvements, and then we'll wrap up. So again, this is a pretty generic process. If you're looking at this and thinking this looks really complicated, I can guarantee you that your sales team is more complicated than this. We've abstracted it out to make it easier to review. But let's say that starting with how do you get leads or accounts or contacts, whatever you work with, you start with your inbound and outbound teams. You have inbound is coming through some marketing channels, likewise with outbound, and they might come in For instance, through Salesforce, some teams with some marketing sources might get email referrals that then a sales manager might farm out to reps based on different parameters at each company. So let's say it comes through Salesforce. Your rep has been assigned a new lead, and then they're going to move to phase 2, the contacting cadence. But if we stay in phase 1 with lead and list acquisition, I'll show you in a minute, we can identify particular tools that will help just with that. Moving to phase 2, this is all about core sales communication activities. This is about the rep dialing, the rep emailing, recording those activities. If they're contacted, making the pitch, following the sales playbook that the sales management and sales trainers have laid out, and then qualifying them, getting them interested, moving into phase 3, and trying to value the opportunity, seeing if there's something that the client is interested in, and then moving them down the sales funnel eventually till they're closed won, hopefully. So that's the 3 phases, and you can look at the first one as a lot more demand generation. Again, the kind of the boundary between marketing and sales. Phase 2 has a lot of core sales communication activity. Phase 3 is really core sales activity, moving someone from the top to the bottom of the funnel, demonstrating the value of your product and getting them to agree, getting that proposal out to them, and eventually getting them to sign. So we move to phase 1. So some of the tools that Ben talked about, where you can see kind of where these problems arise, and the tools Ben talked about are where we can kind of fix these problems. So right here we have is the where and when the problems might arise. So if you're going through inbound and going through HubSpot, for instance, in this diagram, you might get a scoring model through HubSpot that's built by rule-based marketing principles. Email notification system, it's not immediate. You can send it to a sales development rep, and they may not be interested. If you're going through outbound and you're waiting, you're trying to manage, say, self-prospecting through Google or ads, you're waiting for someone to upload or integrate those leads with Salesforce, and you're waiting for the rep to access those leads, and they have no ability to understand, okay, I've got maybe 10,000 leads in my team to work through. Which ones do I start with? And a marketer might not be able to tell you which leads are most valuable. A marketer might be able to tell you which lead sources convert best to marketing qualified leads, but you need some other tool to tell you which leads actually convert to revenue for your company. You see the same in phase 2 with sales communication. With reports, you can lose a lot of time in reports. When you're trying to contact a client or a prospective client, there's just all sorts of stuff you can fall into. Are you emailing them? Are you calling them? How do you keep track? Are they just going to keep ignoring you on the call because they see this 800 number and they're not interested in being sold to? And then we move into phase 3, and we're talking about qualification. And you see the same problems. We don't know how are we qualifying differently. We have an unstructured follow-up, so maybe they qualified them, they're now an opportunity, but what does the rep do next? If they're not tracking the activity, then the sales managers don't know how healthy the opportunity is. If you're not using some sort of predictive forecasting tool, then you're just really guessing as to whether that deal is going to close this quarter or next quarter. And also, how do you measure how well your reps are doing? If you can't listen in on those calls, if you can't measure their progress, it's really hard for you to evaluate until the quarter closes and you count all the dimes on the table, how your reps actually did. So this is a simplified process slide that uses some of our technology to show how we could, again, simplify this. Now, sales acceleration is an increasingly broad category, and sales acceleration is all about giving you more than a static CRM and more about productivity and prioritization tools that make your sales team work faster and smarter. So you see here we have on phase 1, NeuralView. NeuralView is the name for our lead scoring service. Again, and ours is slightly different than a marketing lead scoring, and true sales acceleration should depart from marketing lead scoring by not just using human-derived rules, but NeuralView uses machine learning and to build customized algorithms for each company to understand, okay, what are the best leads? So with NeuralView, when NeuralView is being used in conjunction with Salesforce, all of those leads are being scored by their propensity to close. So no matter what marketing source they came from, or no matter the biases of the rep, Neural View is there to say, okay, right now, this lead is the best lead to call. If we move into phase 2, contacting cadence, we use a combination of tools, Next Call or Next Record and Neural Sort. What these do is instead of the reps having to live in Salesforce or a CRM and trying to just figure out where exactly they should go, what lead of 10,000 leads they should cherry pick, it gives them the next best lead to call right away. We can automate that with Sequeless. With Vision is our email engagement. You can track what reps are doing with their email. You can track what their contacts are doing. Again, sales acceleration technologies from us and others cover these core activities. And what they do is they give the managers visibility into what's happening, and they make the reps more productive by prioritizing and automating some of that activity. And then finally, qualification and close. Instead of going through all of these, human-derived rules with all their biases, all their inefficiency, you're using these automated processes to get people into the sales funnel. You're using a recorded phone call to monitor how reps are doing, using a cadence to make sure that everyone's being contacted at the right time, and even using motivation tools like ours, Power Standings, or other gamification services that keep your reps motivated. You'll notice that what we've done going from the complicated generic slide to the simplified slide is not just added tools, say, Power Standings for gamification, that will make your reps work harder. We've simplified it. We've simplified the process and taken out some of the tasks that can be automated. At Inside Sales, just like any sales acceleration platform, we're focused on leaving the sales to the sales reps and leaving automation to the machines. So prioritizing, leave that to the machines. You got 10,000 leads, a human cannot prioritize them. Now, sales acceleration is not going to make the call for you. It's not going to make the pitch for you. That's what sales reps are for. And sales reps can get really, really good at that. But if you're asking sales reps to do all this manual data entry, to also prioritize 10,000 leads, to also keep track of who to call when at each exact hour based on time zone, propensity to close, propensity to answer, they're not going to have any time to actually be sales reps. They're going to spend all their time trying to prioritize. That's what we offload into the machine, and we let the sales reps sell. So to sum up what I talked about here, I started with talking about some general project management questions that, even though they seem really obvious, people just don't ask. We like to pretend in software that software solves the problem by removing or modifying human behavior, but humans are still problematic. You still have to change human behavior in order to get software to work correctly. Then I walked through this process map, trying to emphasize how sales acceleration tools like those from InsideSales.com really simplify, and they support what Ben was saying of Ben gave it in more detail, why we implement each of these tools is to get that automation bump and to help humans do what they're really bad at, which is prioritize and automate, leave that to the computers, and let the sales reps sell. So, Max, I think I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, awesome. I did have a couple questions throughout, though. So going back to your stakeholders conversation. So, you've been in sales a while. I really want to know, how has the decision maker conversation changed over the past few years? Do you still see the executive level being the kind of key stakeholder and decision maker there, or is it more of the person that's actually doing the implementation, or is it more of the end user? So if you're selling a product to sales, you might have in the past said that the VP of sales is the decision maker, they hold the wallet, the budget, and then you have the person doing the implementation might be sales operations, and then the person that's using the product might be a sales exec or sales development. Are you seeing that shift at all in terms of maybe in the past it was all up to the VP of sales, and now maybe they're not even in the conversation anymore? What have you seen in terms of how the sales process goes when talking to key stakeholders?
That's a great question. A couple of responses. There's usually an executive in sales involved, if nothing else, than writing the check. And sometimes they're not that involved in the software implementation. And you're right on that point, is a lot of times we see a real heavy executive engagement during negotiations, as everyone that's sold software can attest to, and then heavy executive integration at key milestones. In between, you're dealing with a lot of manager, director level folks who are really in charge of integration. And your job goes from, demonstrating value to an executive to working really closely with a more mid-level team so you can just get the integration done. Because if you can't get the integration done, that executive is not going to accept an excuse of, well, your people were too difficult to work with or they wouldn't answer my emails. The executive is buying your software partially based on the belief that he thinks you can work with his people to implement it. And I think the other thing that's changed is there's just a lot more technical detail. Maybe this has been driven by Salesforce kind of pushing CRMs forward and just generally by the technology that's available for sales now. But what we see is the sales exec, one of the reasons he's buying software or one of the reasons she might be looking to hire a team to consult and implement software is they need help motivating and inspiring their own team. Reps, especially if they're not just a bunch of young kids right out of college, reps need to understand why they're changing their processes. And those executives will be looking to you to work with the data team, maybe it's the sales ops team, maybe it's the BI team, to demonstrate to reps, okay, this is why it's valuable. So I don't think it's as useful now to think about it as you sell the VP of sales, he's going to walk into the sales floor and whip everyone into shape and make sure there's compliance. You really have to demonstrate the value to the exec, but then also demonstrate it to the reps and their managers and get the buy-off of the technical level, or you'll never get your software integrated correctly, and it won't matter who else believes in you.
Yeah, and then that leads into adoption and customer success and all the other things that kind of fold into that, making sure that the team's not only using the product, but they're using it the right way. I see more and more companies coming out now that are being very selective about how they onboard companies, what companies they onboard, the license, sizes and all that kinds of stuff. So it's really interesting how that's changed, and obviously technology has made it change things quite a bit. So a lot of what we spoke about today, so we have a question here, does all this apply to an organization of one? And what I was going to say is a lot of what we spoke about today, I think we spoke about from I think companies of all sizes can use all this information. But is there, if you're talking to a startup, or if you're talking to a VP of sales at a Fortune 500 company, I guess what changes, in the conversation of implementing technology in your sales process? Do you just simplify? And what would be the simplest version that you would start with? Like if you started from scratch tomorrow, like what would you need? What is absolute?
Yeah. Hey, Max, this is Ben. Can you hear me? Can you hear me this time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Apologies to everyone for getting my call dropped earlier. You didn't miss much. But anyways, to address this, look, when you think about a sales team, we're talking about individual sales people here. And the team part is all of them working in combination with each other. And the more you do that, the more automation and the more efficiencies you need, because there's a lot of complications that get introduced by just sheer volume of leads, by trying to figure out territories, by trying to, all the things that happen when you go and hire a bunch of sales folks and you start driving in a lot of interest. If you break it down to the individual level, though, a lot of these things are still very relevant. I would certainly think about, first and foremost, well, what do you sell? How do people buy what you sell? How are you engaging with them today? Just taking a big step back and kind of mapping all of that out first and foremost, and then looking at where you'd like to improve. You've got to do a little bit of benchmarking. You've got to see, what are my open rates for these types of emails? And, am I able to find the right types of prospects I'm going after? Is my total addressable market big enough for what I do? How do I find that data? Things like that. But I think for a team of one, it's still really important that you're using some type of engagement platform to do, to measure your effectiveness of your emails. You still can do testing, multivariate testing of certain templates, certain subject headers, et cetera, to make yourself more effective. There's lots of great tools out there across all the things that we've talked about that have either freemium versions. Datanize has a free browser plugin. You can go to our website and download it and get a ton of really valuable data. We've got almost 30,000 sales reps that have signed up for it this year. They're using it individually. So I think there's a lot of great tools out there that allow the individual. Now, when we get into predictive lead scoring and things like that, I think there is certainly a level of sophistication and size of a team where that becomes much more effective. For instance, there's got to be a good sample set to get an accurate score. If you have 5 customers, it's really hard to do lead scoring based on 5 examples and then find the commonalities and the pros and the positive and negative attributes between 5 customers. But if you have 1,000, well, then there's good data there that you can dig through. So a lot of it is certainly volume-based, but I think there's a ton of great tools out there. Many of them are free and can make you much more effective as an individual.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Great. I think that's all the time we have for today. There are a couple other questions here that we can get to in the Q&A chat. But thank you, everybody, for joining in. We had some great attendance, some really great content. This will be recorded and released through Inside Sales. So thank you for joining us. Thanks, guys, for the great conversation, and looking forward to doing it again soon.